Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. Good morning and welcome to Hope from the Hill. I am Anthony Michael Chandler and I'm so excited that you've joined us today. Don't you change your channel. God has a word for you today. Job, a man who had everything working in his favor: faith, family, finances, friends, and a fascinating future. Everyone called him a winner. Everyone was proud to say, "I'm with Job." You could often hear the crowd chanting, "Job, Job, he's our man. If he can't do it, no one can." People were excited about Job. Even God boasted about him and said, "There's no one on earth like Job." And the story is told that everybody just knew that Job was a winner. But one day, the electoral college in hell outnumbered the host of angels from heaven who were rooting and pulling for Job. But the electoral college agreed that we are not rooting for Job, we are pulling for Trump, Satan. Friends, please forgive me for going off script for a moment, but how does a nation rebound when Mufasa has moved away from the scene and now Scar and a few cronies he has left is sitting in the Oval Office? For 8 years, we had the proud and respectful leadership of Mufasa. And now, all because of Scar's ego and Scar's irrationality and Scar's ignorance, 800,000 people are wondering when they will receive their next paycheck. People just like Job, who were just minding their own business, trying to make an earnest and decent living, are now waiting in limbo for a paycheck. Can you imagine Deacon Willie Brown Sr., what they are going through? Can you imagine how many hours of sleep they've lost over the past few weeks? Can you imagine the magnitude of stress and headaches and the conundrum of confusion that has cultivated their prayer life? Friends, what do you do when you've done almost everything right and according to the plan, but the results and the outcome and the prognosis and the news and the conclusion just doesn't mirror your faithfulness and your sacrifice and your service to the kingdom and your love and devotion to God and your patience and tolerance of people, both the good and the demonic? It seems to be rewarded not always with joy bells ringing in your soul, not always with a peace that passes all understanding, not always with joy for your sorrow, but instead a sickness that has changed almost everything about your life, or a decision God made that has altered your dreams and the plans for your future. Or what about that setback that has others wondering if you'll ever recover. My heart goes out to those of you who are right now living through a season of guilt and worry and the feelings of being rejected by your own family and familiar circle. What about those poor, innocent souls in this room who did their part, but for somebody else didn't uphold their end of the deal or the vows or the promise made, forcing you to now start over again? Has anybody ever concluded that life just ain't fair? I want to suggest today, deacons, that you haven't experienced the bitter cup of life until you faced a day when you had to say, God, of all things, why this? You haven't experienced the bitter cup of life until you spent too much time waiting on God to do for you the same thing that he's done so graciously for someone else. But in your life, it seems like it ain't never happening for you. You haven't experienced the bitter cup of life until you've received that one phone call that changed everything. Or let me ask, has anybody in this room ever lived through a season when in fact you were doing everything right, but you honestly felt like God was doing you wrong? Preach, Pastor Chandler. And I know it's hard for some of you to be honest. Maybe that's why God sent you a pastor like me who doesn't mind telling the truth. But has anyone in this room ever felt like in some kind of way God was picking on you? You felt like he made a bad call, or like he just wasn't giving you a break, or as if he had chosen the wrong person. Have any of you ever experienced seasons when you've had to ask yourself, what am I going to do now? How am I going to make it through this? How will I be able to face tomorrow and the next day and the day after? When will times get better? And when will this nightmare come to an end? Friends, what do you do when the news just doesn't get better? What do you do when you face that moment that you always hope would never come? What do you do when you've tried to get along? You've tried to make it work. You tried to make the best of the situation. You tried to hold your head up. You tried to be stronger. You tried to keep pushing and fighting and to be faithful. You tried to make it to the winner's circle. Yet, you are here today, right now, fighting the tears. Here you are today, trying not to focus on the pain. Here you are today, resisting the urge to look at the pictures on your phone. Here you are today, wondering what the next report will say. Here you are today, wondering, will your private struggle ever become a public story? Here you are today, trying to move forward, but for some reason, you keep looking back. Here you are today, wondering if this will be the year or will this be the end. I guess the gist of this sermon, or the relevant question for seminarians listening today, is this: what do you do when you can't understand what God is doing? What do you do when you can't understand what God is thinking and his method of operating? What do you do when you feel like God has bumped his own head? How do you survive a shutdown? I'm sure this is how Job must have felt. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 of this book is when everything went down. And if you have no idea of what I'm talking about, your homework tonight is to go home and read at least the first 3 chapters of the book of Job, and be warned, his story will blow your mind. Bible and Sunday school students know very well and of the cruel hand that was dealt to Job, and how the trajectory of his life moved in a whole nother direction. He lost the people and those things that mattered most to him: his family, all of his children, the beautiful home he and his wife had built, and the fortune that brought him so much fame. In a matter of hours, he has lost everything. Can I tell somebody this morning, it doesn't take a long time to lose everything. Preach, Pastor Chandler. That's why you got to enjoy every great moment that God gives to you and live your life daily to the best of your ability, because tomorrow is not promised to any of us in this room. Look at somebody and say, tomorrow is coming. Tomorrow is coming. I read something not too long ago that said, live your life and don't wait to do it, because right now is the oldest you've ever been and the youngest you'll ever be again. Preach, Pastor Chandler. In this text, Job is living out his worst nightmare. Again, I don't know. I know y'all don't like being honest in church, but have any of you ever had life flip on you? I mean, one day the sun was shining, and the very next day an earthquake was taking place in your life. One day all was well, and the next day you were wondering, how did things get this bad? And friends, please don't be so naive to think that every day will be a yippee-ki-yay day. Nah, my friends, I've lived long enough to know that life will flip on you. Come on, wake up somebody and say, yes, it will. Yes, it will. Life will flip on you. Things will happen. People will leave you. Pain will find you. Trouble will chase you. Sickness will plague you. Death will haunt you. Divorce will find you. Miscarriages will occur. Accidents will happen. Emergencies will appear. Arguments will take place. Misunderstandings will be the order of the day. Children will disappoint you. Age will catch up with you. Money will spend quickly. Fear will encamp you. Regret will keep you awake. Your feelings will get hurt. Anger will fester. Disease will try to kill you. Friends will neglect you. Family will upset you. Church folk will talk about you. And there will be times when it feels like God has deserted you. Life will flip on you. So what? You were born at the altar and raised in the sanctuary and grew up with the pastor's kids. Life will flip on you. I don't care how many scriptures you know or how many verses of amazing grace you can sing. Life will flip on you. I don't care how long your skirt may be or how much starch you got in your Sunday go-to-meeting shirt. Life will flip on you. I don't care how much you serve or the number of zeros in your giving or the number of D's behind your last name. You can be the town's hero, but life will flip on. Well, one of my favorite preachers in the whole world by the name of Bishop Forrest Gump once said that life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. Look at somebody and say, life will flip on you. At the time of this text, Job has lost everything, and to make matters worse, for the last few chapters, he's been arguing with his so-called friends. Can I pull over to share with somebody today that trouble will teach you who your true friends are? Yeah, it don't sound right, but it's good. Trouble will teach you about who your true friends are. Somebody say, I know that's right. I know that's right. Matter of fact, I didn't realize how fake some people were until I one day found myself in some trouble. And some of them Negroes still haven't. Not the ones. They are the ones who won't disappear when you're facing your problems. It was the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we honor tomorrow, who once said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Many of us have learned that some people became ghosts and were gone with the wind when trouble knocked at our doorsteps. Trouble will show you who your true friends are and the true colors of your circle. But every now and again, you ought to send a personal message and say thank you to the people who were with you when you needed them the most. Come on, help me take a moment and give God a shout of praise for the true friends in your life who were there for you when you needed them when you needed them the most. They didn't go AWOL. They didn't leave you hanging, nor did they kick you to the curb. But you ought to thank God for the people who said, I'm staying. If you going through, I'm going through with you. If you got to fight, you won't have to fight by yourself. I'm fighting with you. I thank God for the friends who didn't just watch me cry, but they cried with me. I thank God for the friends who didn't leave me out there praying alone, but they came by my side and said, give me your hands, give me your hands. Who am I talking to? Can I tell you, friends, in this season, you don't just need or want people who you can travel with and people who you can drink and dance with. You don't just need people who will help you pick the right numbers to play or pick the boo you're hoping for. You just don't need people to play bid whiz or spades with. You just don't need people, a road dog or a FaceTime friend or a cut-up buddy. But when your back is against the wall and when you are in a storm, you need somebody who will come where you are and say, give me your hands and let's talk to God about this situation. Give me your hands and let's together believe that when two of us can agree on anything, anything can happen. I dare you look at somebody and say, give me your hands, give me your hands. I can't tell you the number of people over the past few weeks who have asked me, how are you doing? And y'all, it has taken everything in me not to respond the way I want to. And I know they don't mean no harm, but when they ask me how you're doing, there's a part of me that wants to respond, how do you think I'm doing? Stop asking me questions and throw your hands around me and let's talk to God about it. Look at somebody and say, you need some prayer warriors in your corner. You need somebody who can talk to God. You need somebody who can plead the blood. You need somebody who can be an intercessor. Am I talking to anybody? This is the season for some of us to evaluate our circles. Can I talk to somebody? Stop wasting your time trying to be there for people who ain't never there for you. Preach, Pastor Chandler. Evaluate your circle. Stop accepting every friend request that you receive. Choose your circle wisely, because I don't know about you, but I'd rather have 4 quarters than 20 nickels any day. Am I talking to anybody? I want friends who have mental illness just like I do. I want friends who are in therapy just like I'm in therapy. I want friends who are on medicine. Y'all not talking back to me. Just like good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they're there. Preach, Pastor Chandler. In this text, Job has lost everything, but in this chapter 13 of the book named in his honor. And friends, when you've been through what Job has been through, you deserve a book in your honor. Touch your neighbor and say, I'm a book in the making. I am a book in the making. Sadly, when many people see some of us now, they see all the glory, but they have no idea concerning our stories. Y'all not talking back to me. But every now and then you have to pull some folk aside and tell them, do not judge my story by the chapter you just walked into. Because there's more to my story than the chapter you are privileged to read through right now. And I'm trying to move on, y'all. But where are the people in Cedar at the second service who can holler back at your preacher and say, yes, I got a story, I got a story, I got a story, Pastor. I'm talking to the real folk in church who know they ain't always been in church. I'm talking to the real folk who can say, I ain't always been saved. I'm talking to the real folk who even since you've been in church, you've done some things that the people in church ain't, y'all not talking back to me, ain't supposed to be doing. And I see some of you looking at me like you don't understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. And you can fake and front all you want to, but just like everybody else sitting around you, boo, you got a story too. Where are the people who can honestly say that you've done some things that you're not proud of? Where are the people who can honestly say that you've made some choices that had you known then what you know now, you would have checked another box. Where are the people who can honestly say that you've done some things that were so ruthless that if God didn't already know about it, you wouldn't even tell him about it? Look at somebody and say, all of us have a story. But not only do all of us have a story, but some of us know what it means to struggle. Am I talking to anybody in here today? Some of us know what it means to struggle. Ladies, see, our kids still don't believe that for years me and my little brother Mookie slept together every night on the same sofa bed. I think y'all missed that. We slept together every night on the same sofa bed, and they think I'm lying, y'all, when I tell them that I grew up in a house that only had one bathroom, only had one toilet, only had one sink. Y'all trying to get brand new up in here, and one tub. We only had one, but we were on time for school every day. We were on time for church every Sunday. We knew Deacon Hurt how to struggle. And not only did we have one bathroom, but in my house we only had one telephone. And before we got fancy, it was that one telephone that was attached to the wall in the kitchen. Don't y'all look at me like that. With that long twisted cord. And when you were in there, you leaned on the wall. We shared the same phone. Look at somebody and say, I know something about struggle. And if the truth was told, it wasn't even really a struggle to us. We just did what we had to do. I need to hear from some folk who've been through a struggle and who lived through a struggle and who survived a struggle. Where is my spam clan up in here? Where are the sardine and cracker saints up in here? Where are the people who had a TV with a wire hanger, who remember that when the TV stations went off at night, before they went off, you heard the star spit. Y'all not talking back. High five somebody and say, I know something about a struggle. I know something about making it. I know something about pressing your way even when you don't have what everybody else has. And now many of us are raising these little ungrateful Baptist acting kids who want the blessings, but they fuss, complain, and have a problem following simple instructions. Am I talking to anybody in church? In this text, I'm almost done. In this text, it is clear that Job has a story and that Job knows something about struggle. But if you know his story, you also know that right now Job is in a storm. Yes, Job is in a storm. Everything he had is gone. Everything on him is hurting, and everyone around him is working his everlasting nerve. But in chapter 13, hallelujah, in chapter 13, I read something again last week, y'all, that spoke peace to my own storm. And let me give this disclaimer today that this sermon is not for those of you in this room who were sitting in church acting like you hit the number last week. This sermon is not for those of you who just came off your honeymoon or getting ready to go on an 8-night cruise. This sermon is not for those of you who left the doctor's office last week skipping and shouting because all your numbers were good and you're happy because your doctor told you lost some weight. This sermon is not for you, for those of you who have spouses that you just hate to be away from, or children who you never feel like slapping, or for those of you who have parents who you're always in the mood to talk to, or for those of you who come from the perfect family. This sermon is not for all of the happy, perfect people in church today, but this sermon is for the people who are looking happy, but they going through hell. Y'all not talking back to me today. This sermon is for the people who are trying to survive a shutdown, not just in the government, but in their home, in their lives, in their bodies, in their mind, and on their job. They look happy, but they miss paying a bill on the 15th of the month. They look happy in church today, but they work on a job that's causing their pressure to go up. They look happy, but they got a child who's all the way out there. They look happy, but they have pain in their body right now that Tylenol and Advil can't get rid of. They look happy, but they got a major decision that they got to make this month. They look happy, but they are waiting on a report, and their gut keeps telling them that it ain't going to be good. They look happy, but right now they are wondering, what in the world is God doing? Am I talking to anybody in church today? But I'm so glad that you came to church today, because I'm talking to somebody who may be in Cedar, but your life is in a crisis right now. But I'm so glad you came to church, because Job, even in his worst hour, had the audacity to open up his mouth and say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That makes me feel good. I'm trying to hold it together up here. But Job said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Y'all might not believe me, but there are people in this room right now who are right now between a though and a not yet. Y'all not talking back to me. There is somebody sitting right next to you who is between a though and a yet. Though he's slaying me, yet will I trust him. Though he's scaring me, yet will I trust him. Though he's allowing this thing to ruin my life, yet will I trust him. Though I'm scared out of my mind, yet will I trust him. Though I don't know what this year will bring, yet will I trust him. Though I don't know when I'm going to get paid, yet will I trust him. Though I don't know how long I can take this, yet will I trust him. Though I don't know how I'm going to raise these kids by myself, yet I will trust him. Though I don't know if it's going to work out on time, I dare you grab somebody and say, but I trust him, but I trust him, but I trust him. Job is between a though and a yet. Anybody in church ever been here before where you had to live your life between a though and a yet? You've got to remember what David said when David said, some trust in chariots and others put their trust in horses, but we will trust in the name of the Lord.
Wow, what a word. I pray that the sermon blessed your life. It certainly blessed mine. I'm so happy that you joined us today. If you don't have a church home, if you don't have a pastor, I'd love to be your pastor. Come and join us. We worship here every Sunday at 7:45 a.m. and at 10:45 a.m. We're located 2301 Cedar Street in the heart of Church Hill. Until next time, I want you to remember that God's word said you should live above only and not beneath. I love you. Have a wonderful week.
Bring all of your family and friends with you on Sunday, February 3rd for Super Soul Sunday. Come dressed in jerseys to represent your favorite team.
Calling all engaged couples or those considering engagement. We want you to attend a one-day premarital workshop called the Before I Say I Do Boot Camp. It goes down Saturday, March the 16th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The cost is only $100. That $100 includes lunch and a continental breakfast. Please contact the church office for more information.
I started out as a prosecutor, and the advantage of starting out as a prosecutor is that you see both sides of the law, and you could help your clients to be more realistic in what they can expect.
3 years ago, I filed bankruptcy, and 3 years later, I'm okay. I can't speak highly enough about Joe Massey and the experience dealing with this law firm.
Today's weekly broadcast is brought to you in part by Manning Funeral Home. Walter J. Manning Funeral Home has been providing professional and caring service to the families in our communities since 1941. They provide pre-needed and pre-planning services as well as cremation and video tributes. Their large chapels, spacious parlors, and caring staff are all a part of a third generation carrying out a tradition of dignity and respect. Manning Funeral Home, 700 North 25th Street, Richmond, Virginia. We're there when you need us most.